Good day, ladies and gents, wherever you may be around the world, and welcome to Splendid Isolation number 147. As always, I'm going to start us off with a tune.
Take up the white man's burden, send forth the best ye breed. Go bind your sons to exile, to serve your captives' need, to wait in heavy harness on flooded folk and wild. Your new gods sullen peoples have devil and have child. Take up the white man's burden, in patience to abide, to veil the threats of terror and check the show of pride. By open speech and simple, 100 times made plain, to seek another's profit and work another's gain. Take up the white man's burden, the savage wars of peace. Fill full the mouth of famine and bid the sickness cease. And when your goal is nearest, the end for others sought, what's love that heathen folly bring all your hopes to loss? Take up the white man's burden, not tawdry rule of kings, but toil of serf and sweeper, the tale of common things. The pots ye shall not enter, the roads ye shall not tread. Go make them with your living and mark them with your dead. Take up the white man's burden and reap his soul's reward. The blame of those ye better, the hate of those ye guard. The cry of those ye humor are slowly towards the light. Why brought ye us from bondage, our loved Egyptian night? Take up the white man's burden, ye dare not stoop to less, nor call too loud on freedom to cloak your weariness. By all ye cry or whisper, by all ye leave or do, the silent, sullen people shall weigh your gods and you. Take up the white man's burden, have done with childish days, the lightly proffered laurel, the easy young grudge praise. Come thou to search your manhood through all of thankless years. No age with dear bought wisdom, the judgment of your peers. Take off the white man's burden through all the thankless years.
Okay, that was, of course, the excellent Chris Gard with The White Man's Burden. which is his original rendition of a Rudyard Kipling poem. Do go and check out Chris Gard's excellent music channel on YouTube. He's got some really good traditional music and also some more modern stuff, which I think most people here will like. I'm not sure how long this evening's stream is going to be because I've got one guest coming on, but they've told me they're going to be late, and I don't know who else we're going to get at this stage. And I don't really want to start the main subject until my guest does arrive, because I know his views are, I'm not saying that his views are opposite to mine on this, but they might be. I'm still undecided, to be honest, about what I think about this stuff. In the meantime, if anyone's got questions in the chat, you can ask and I will answer them. You will notice there is a link at the top of the chat for Entropy where you can send a super chat if you want to. But if people just ask questions in the chat, I will do my best to answer them until I find out when my guest is going to arrive. But you tell me he might be a bit late. Interesting week in Britain, certainly, because you've got all these pro-Palestinian protests going on. And apparently there's going to be a huge Palestinian protest on Armistice Sunday, which is amazing to me that it's not just banned for Armistice Sunday anyway. I mean, that's what should happen. It should just be banned for that day, because that's the day Britain remembers her war dead, and indeed all dead British soldiers going back to 1914. So I think that is that is what the government should do. They should just say, no, can't be a Palestinian protest on Armistice Sunday. Just not possible. Puffwagon, have I been marching for Palestine? No, Puffwagon, I have not. I say a plague on both their houses. I don't support the Palestinians and I don't support Israel. I don't care. I am indifferent. I am neutral as regards the Middle East conflict. I'm not an Israeli and I'm not a Palestinian, and it's not Britain's problem at all. And the fact that all these people are marching, and I don't care which side they're marching from in Britain, just shows you that there are too many non-Anglo-Celtic people in the British Isles. So that's my view about it. I'm not in favor of the Palestinians, as I say, but I'm not in favor of the Israelis either. I'm neutral. It's not Britain's problem. We have more than enough problems in Britain without worrying about crap like that. So yeah, and people were. I was on Twitter, X, if you like, earlier, and someone was asking what should happen to all these protesters. My view is all of them should be deported permanently. John Best in the chat. Yeah, I see what you're saying there, mate. I do see your point. I personally, as I say, I don't think you can get rid of every single non-Anglo-Celtic person out of Britain. I wish you could, but I don't think you can. But I certainly think if you're going to protest on Remembrance Sunday, then yeah, you should just be deported, full stop. I did also notice that people were saying they'd taken the flags off the cenotaph and stuff because of this protest, and apparently that's not true. Apparently they do this about a week before Remembrance Sunday every year, and they steam clean the cenotaph and they wash the flags and all this stuff, so it's all bright and shiny for Remembrance Sunday. So that may be people on Twitter have been jumping ahead of themselves. Good day to Sunny Jim in the chat. Good day to Biarki in the chat. Good day to John Best and to Wiggles. But yeah, so that stuff's quite interesting. I mean, personally, I'm quite sick to death of the coverage of this Middle East stuff at the moment. I mean, you know, people were going on about the Ukraine-Russia war was just going on, but I mean, you know, it's a bit more interesting than the Israeli Air Force carpet bombing Gaza all the time, which is pretty much all I can see going on at the moment. Simple Pirate in the chat said, more Americans are using British slang, and it's disturbing. Wow, I don't know. I think there's much to be said for British slang myself. Tricky Woo, don't disagree with that. I'm not going to repeat your comment because it's YouTube that we're on, but I don't disagree with what you're saying there. But yeah, I think this it's just very revealing. You know, leading members of the American Congress and people in the American House of Representatives, first thing they say as soon as they get in, their first bill is to send money to Israel. And you would think America had enough problems of its own that it would want to deal with before it started dealing with Israel. But no, apparently not. Apparently not. And I do incidentally agree with Academic Agent when he says that the counter-jihad thing is probably nothing that's going to help us on the DR. I don't think it is. You know, just going the counter-jihad route, no, it never works. I mean, look what happened to Tommy Robinson, for example, and quite a lot of other people around that area. So, you know. Yes, exactly, Tricky Boo. I believe that is true. Like I said, guys, I'm waiting for a guest who told me he's going to be a bit late before we really discuss this issue. So if people have questions in the chat, now is your chance to ask them. And of course, you can send us a super chat if you so desire via the link to Entropy, which is pinned at the top of the chat. Good day to Melon in the chat. I'm happy to say, of course, I'm down under, and I'm happy to say that thanks to the British time going back because of daylight saving, I'm now able to do these streams at 8 o'clock in the morning rather than the 6 o'clock in the morning I ended up doing half the year. John Brown, Queen Victoria's Gilly has to go. Yeah, John, didn't, what's his name? That Scottish comedian actor, he played him in the film, didn't he? Billy Connolly. I think he played him, didn't he? Quite well, actually, if I recall. But yeah, John Brown became quite important to Queen Victoria after her husband died, Prince Albert, and actually was partly responsible for getting her out in public again after about 20 years when people hardly ever saw her because she was in deep mourning all the time. So yes, there is that. Do I have any thoughts on Freemasonry, says Duke Valentino. I don't really, mate. The Duke of Wellington, for example, refused to join the Freemasons. I can tell you that much, because I do know that. They wanted him to join because he was a leading dude in his day, and he said, no, I'm not going to do that. Are they as bad as some people claim? I don't know, to be honest. I mean, traditionally in the UK, the only thing that being a Freemason did for you is it might get you off a traffic fine or something now and again, you know. But I don't think it was particularly evil, but I know not everyone agrees with that, so yeah. Simple Pirate saw the film. Good on you, mate. Yes, I thought it was not a bad film. Were there many Masons in the army? I don't think there were that many, Duke Valentino, but like, I've never been one, so I don't really know, but I don't think there were many, no. And as I said, back in the day, the Duke of Wellington actually refused to become a Mason because he wrote about it somewhere that I seem to recall reading. Wiggles, I don't think the scandalous rumours about John Brown were true at all. No, I don't think they were either. I think it was a fairly innocent relationship myself. The UVF and the Northern Irish Police are all Masons, aren't they? That's what I heard. I don't know that, Duke Valentino. I did actually invite Lady of Shalott to today's stream, although she might not have seen it or she might be busy. And she would be the person to ask about that because she was born in Northern Ireland. So, yeah, and she does sometimes come into the chat because she's a moderator on this channel, like she is so many others. If she comes into the chat, I will ask her if she knows that. Yeah, exactly, Wiggles. The army is a bit of a club, and sergeant's mess and the officer's mess and all that kind of stuff. So yes, you have all that sort of thing going on all the time anyway. Although the current state of the British Army is appalling, frankly. Did I know army lads going with Catholic women? Duke Valentino. When I first did a tour in Northern Ireland in the early 80s, we had been banned from going out of barracks because what the vile pyro guys were doing, the provisional IRA, I mean, well, they were setting up honey traps with like cute Catholic girls who would, be chatted up by a British soldier in a pub somewhere or something, or a bar, and they would then, suggest going somewhere to do the business, if you know what I mean. And there would be a couple of pyro terrorists there who would shoot the poor soldier in the back of the head and execute him. So they actually stopped us going. They actually stopped us leaving barracks. So is Northern England still an industrial wasteland? It largely is, mate. To be honest, sadly, Britain doesn't make very much these days. Not much at all, really. Brian Burrow, yeah, there were 3 Scottish soldiers that were an infamous example of what I was just talking about in Northern Ireland. Yep. That happened to a lot of soldiers. That's why eventually they just wouldn't let us out of barracks, which was not much fun, I have to say. But yeah. Certainly there are lots of Ulstermen who are members of the Orange Lodge for sure. That's very common. But yeah, that's true enough. But of course, people forget the Provisional IRA the leadership of the Provisional IRA were Marxists. And this is why the current political side of the Provisional IRA, that's Sinn Féin, are those people that are all in favour of Brits out and Somalians in Ireland. They're completely in favour of third world mass immigration into Southern Ireland, into the Republic. Absolutely crazy, in my view. And in the view of a lot of Irish dudes who I like. Yeah, Biarki has quite a good channel, by the way, folks. If you're in the chat, Biarki in the chat there has quite a good channel with a lot of music on it and stuff like that. I'm subbed to his YouTube channel, so yeah, do go and check that out. Well, John Best, to be honest, yes, I get that you hate the Irish political class, but I mean, I hate the British political class too, to be honest with you. I mean, where do you go? I mean, you've got the Conservatives, in inverted commas, air quotes, who are in no way conservative and conserve nothing. And then you have the stupid people in Britain are thinking, well, we'll vote Labour then. And Labour will be at least as bad and possibly even worse on immigration. The idea that voting Labour is any sort of solution is ridiculous. You can't vote Labour or Tory. You certainly can't vote Lib Dems, and you certainly can't vote Greens because they're watermelon greens, green on the outside and communist red on the inside. So, yeah, you've got to avoid all of those parties pretty much. What do I think of the tradition of the official IRA and the Irish National? I know what you're talking about, but I can't remember the initials exactly now. Official IRA were a much smaller group because, of course, they split with the Provisionals quite a while ago and were much less Marxist. I mean, the original official IRA was a bit fashy, if anything. Totally unlike the Provisionals, who, as I say, the leadership of the Provisionals were absolutely Marxist. I have seen talk of people taking over the Conservative Party, Wiggles, so many times, and it never happens. I see the point that Carl was trying to make, and I suppose, yeah, try it if you want, but I don't think it'll work. I don't think it'll work. I think they will weed out anyone like that at a fairly early stage. And if my guest AI gets here fairly soon, I know he used to be a member of the Conservative Party, and his view on that is that it's very difficult to take over the Conservatives and make them a better party. So, yeah. Can I discuss the Irish War of Independence from a military perspective? Well, not really, because it wasn't really a military battle, was it? Let's be honest. I mean, had Britain wanted to win that, they could have. But we'd just come off the end of the First World War with the enormous casualties in the First World War, and there wasn't much appetite for fighting in Ireland. And so Britain never sent anywhere near enough troops there to physically stop that rebellion. If you look at the number of soldiers that Britain had in Northern Ireland on occasions in the 70s and 80s, it was larger than the total number of troops Britain had in all of Ireland in 1921, say. But then Apostolic Majesty did an excellent stream on why Britain joined World War I a while ago. It's not a particularly long stream, but it's very good, and there's really nothing anyone with any historical knowledge can disagree with in it. And he points out in that stream that the outbreak of World War I, one of the reasons, not the main one, but one of the reasons Britain went into World War I was it enabled them to ignore the what could have turned into a big problem in Ireland in 1914, because the British Army was threatening to mutiny if the Ulster Protestants and the Loyalists in the south as well were forced into an independent Ireland. And the British Army, quite a lot of the British Army, and specifically some of their quite senior officers, were saying, we're not going to, not only will we not enforce this, but we'll go on the other side. So some of the British government, which was a Liberal government, of course, in 1914, were quite happy that they could then put Ireland on the back burner while the First World War went on. And then, of course, you had the uprising in 1916 in Dublin, which kind of brought it back in again. Although it is noticeable that the 1916 uprising didn't have anything like complete support, even in the South and even in Dublin. Wiggles in the chat. It's a nice, hopeful, the inevitable Tory defeat. I don't know. I think the Conservatives are going to lose the next election. I'd be amazed if they don't. Probably not as badly as some of us thought they were going to 6 months ago. But that's more Labour incompetence than anything else. But the Labour and the Conservative Party are basically a uni party. It's very much like the Republicans and the Democrats in America. They're a uni party, basically, the mainstream dudes in those parties. And the same goes for the Liberals and the Labour Party in Australia. They're a uni party. There's very, very little difference in practical difference in their policies. There really is. Dublin was 20% British back then. And you're going to Dublin next week, John Best. Yeah, I've been to Dublin. It's quite an interesting city to visit, actually. Quite pleasant. Well, it was when I went there, which was quite a few years ago. But, yeah. Simple Pirate is saying America is so screwed. I'm dreading next year because of the elections. I take it, Simple Pirate. Yeah, I can see your point. I mean, who's going to win? I mean, I suppose Trump is still the best bet if you're a patriotic American. Whether they'll allow him to run or not is a different matter, but I guess we'll find out. Belfast is very nice these days. Yes, I'm told that. I'm told it is. And of course, unlike a lot of the rest of Britain, there's not been much mass immigration into Belfast, which is certainly makes it good. Brian Borrow says that County Wicklow in the Republic is 20% Protestant. I know quite a few Irishmen from the South, Brian Borrow, who are actually loyalists, although they live in the Republic. And of course, it's been the case that, you know, the Irish Guards, for example, still heavily recruit in Southern Ireland. So, but yeah, people have been telling me that Belfast is better than it used to be, and I think that's where Lady of Shalott was born. Actually, was Belfast, and she speaks quite kindly of it. What are my thoughts on inbreeding in the Islamic world? Well, yeah, cousin marriages, that's not a good thing, is it? Obviously. It's not a good thing. There's a reason why this kind of stuff is discouraged by the church and all the rest of it, and is regarded as morally dubious. But it's really because it's unhealthy. It's inbreeding, and it leads to unhealthy children. So. But on the other hand, with white people, our problem is we're just not breeding at all. So, you know, it's the birth rates in all of the Anglosphere and the Western nations, generally, the birth rates are terrible. They're well below the replacement level. I was actually watching a video earlier today, when someone was saying that the Home Office in Britain have recently published a pamphlet where they are expecting British immigration into Britain to double over the next 5 or 6 years. They're expecting it to double. And last year it was running at a net average of about 600,000 in a year. That's net after you allow for people who've left. And they're expecting that to double. So you're talking about well over 1 million a year if that's what actually happens. And I mean, a few years of that is going to mean that Britain is going to just be beyond saving, quite frankly. You know, Britain's just going to be beyond going beyond being saved. And I'm the last person who wants to give up on Britain. I mean, I'm an extremely patriotic Englishman and a Briton. But we're getting close to that time where the country just isn't savable at all, because of the mass immigration, which is totally changing the country. I mean, again, I was on Twitter earlier and people were saying they were in London and hardly anyone is wearing a poppy. And, you know, as I replied to this post, I mean, you know, there's not all that many real British Anglo-Celtic people to wear the poppies. And 3/4 of these black and brown immigrant people are not going to wear a poppy because it doesn't mean anything to them. It's not their ancestors. You know, they'll try and pretend on TV that there's always been black people in Britain, and of course that's a lie. But it is. It's just a lie. But makes no difference, you know. Brian Borrow, white Britain policy like the Aussies used to have. Yeah, sure, I would not disagree with that, but there's no chance of that happening. What did I think about the Rhodesian state? I fully supported Rhodesia, mate. When I lived in South Africa, which I did for 15 years, I knew many Rhodesians or former Rhodesians. We used to call them Wenwees because most of their conversations used to begin with when we were in Rhodesia. And they were very nice people, by the way. Very nice people. But I fully supported Rhodesia back in the day, as did my father as well, incidentally. But there we go. Rhodesia was like a well-off country where everybody, including the African black guys, were getting better and better off until the murdering terrorist Robert Mugabe took over and then plunged the country into absolute chaos. The currency's worth nothing. There's malnutrition all over the place, and Rhodesia used to be one of the bread baskets of Africa when it was run by the white guys. So yeah, there is that. John Edmonds, yes, he would have done one about Wenwees for sure. Yep, Rhodesia was indeed, was indeed dubbed the breadbasket of Africa. Were Rhodesians mostly Dutch? No, they weren't, mate. Most Rhodesians were of British descent. There were Afrikaans people there as well. Absolutely, there were, but most Rhodesians were of British descent. White Rhodesians, I mean, obviously. But there were some Afrikaners there, for sure there were. But not to the degree there are in South Africa. So, yes, there is that too. I see that the Russians, by the way, are still winning in Ukraine, and increasingly you're starting to see the cracks in the Western mainstream media are starting to admit that, like, there's no way Ukraine can win that war, because there isn't. I take it you mean, Duke Valentino, could Rhodesia have been saved? Not, I mean, look, it wasn't losing the war in terms of fighting. It won most of its battles. It was like us in South Africa. The South African Defence Force won 99.9% of all the actions it fought. But in the end, it wasn't a military problem. It was a problem of political support. And also in Rhodesia, don't forget, South Africa dumped on Rhodesia eventually, it has to be said. Like, they supported them for a while and then stopped, because they thought if they gave up Rhodesia, it would take pressure off South Africa. And of course it didn't. It just meant that once Rhodesia fell, then all that pressure was going on South Africa. But the thing to look at when you look at what happened with South Africa, with the former terrorist Nelson Mandela, former self-confessed terrorist Nelson Mandela, taking over in '93, you've got to note that up until the Soviet Union fell in '89, '90, the Soviet Union fell 1989, 1990. Up until that point, Britain and America were giving South Africa quite a lot of covert support, like secret support mostly. Yeah, Israel, for example. Now, here's a thing that's not everyone knows. Israel was an ally of the white government in South Africa. The South African army still uses a version of the Israeli Galil assault rifle. The R4 is basically a South African copy of the Israeli Galil. South African military artillery uses Israeli-designed 155mm guns. And when the white government developed the atom bomb, which they did while they were still in power, that was done with the help of the Israelis. But again, just like Britain and America, once the Soviet Union fell, that support from Israel to South Africa was withdrawn, because it was all given on the basis that South Africa was a bulwark against the commies in Africa. And bear in mind, Castro had Cubans there were East Germans and all the rest of it. So, I think that's true, John Best. There was some truth in that as well. But yeah, so once the Soviet Union fell, all that support was gone. And then you had F.W. de Klerk come in, and I think he gave away far too much, far too easily and far too quickly. But that's me. There was a referendum in the country about whether there should be a handover of power. And all but one area in the country voted yes. I mean, I voted no. So did many of my friends. But there weren't enough of us to affect the thing. And it was only the province right up north near the Kruger National Park. That was the only bit of South Africa that voted no. Everywhere else voted yes, by a greater or lesser margin. This was in South Africa, Duke Valentino, in 92, 93, when they were negotiating with, as I say, the self-confessed terrorist Nelson Mandela, who was not the lovely bloke that many people in the West thought he was. And his wife was a total bitch, Winnie Mandela. She had little black children even killed who she didn't like. Go and look up a dude called Stompie Magetse, who she had killed by her bodyguards. And she was so bad that Mandela eventually had to get rid of her. Yep, the Orange Free State voted yes, Simple Pirate. Yes, they did. They voted yes. Not by a huge amount, but they did. You can find online, if you want to go and look that up, guys, you can go, there are maps online that will show you how South Africa voted in that referendum about whether the white government should go or not. And of course, originally it was going to be some sort of power sharing, but there was nothing to keep it going. You know, there was nothing to keep it going. Yeah, necklaces, which of course were tires soaked in petrol. That was a necklace. Most unpleasant. Rhodesian demographics. Yeah, right. Well, Rhodesian demographics, I mean, obviously there were a hell of a lot more black people than there were white people, but the country was doing a lot better when it was run by the white guys than it's doing today. So, you know. And the same could also be said of South Africa, where basic black wages, etc., in actual buying power have gone down since 1993. They haven't gone up. Well, Duke Valentina, I would hesitate to talk about this because I don't live there anymore, and I wasn't born there, although I lived there for 15 years. I wasn't born there. I was born in England. I would suggest that what you should do is go and check out a channel on YouTube, which is called Conscious Caracal. He's a white Afrikaans dude. He's just got married, actually, to a very pretty girl from the photos I've seen. Yeah, go and check out Conscious Caracal's channel on YouTube. I think he's the best guy to give you information on being a white man in South Africa these days. There's also Robert Dugan, who's another guy who quite often goes on Conscious Caracal's channel. So I'll go and check those dudes out. I know Robert Dugan, for example, is quite a big supporter of Cape independence and actually breaking South Africa up, which might work. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. It might work. Yeah, Nelson Mandela's mad wife is true. Yes, he would be Duke Valentino. I think Semi-Agog has had Conscious Caracal on. Yeah. I like Semi-Agog, by the way. He's got an excellent channel while we're following. I don't know what's happening to my guest. Hopefully they will be here soon. Checking there isn't a message from them at the moment. So yeah, that would definitely be the guy who was on Semi-Agog's channel, Duke Valentino. Soram, let's keep the chat clean, if you don't mind. This is a family show, kind of. It's actually not for children, needless to say. It's an adult show, but yeah, as I said, Conscious Caracal is the dude, Duke Valentino, and I would strongly suggest anyone here goes and subscribes to his channel if you want to keep up on what's going on in South Africa. He also does regular updates on Orania, which is the Afrikaans town that they've set up in the Cape that is kind of self-sufficient. That's also a subject which is worth keeping on with. Have I ever met any Chosenites? I don't even know what a Chosenite is, Duke Valentino. If you can explain to me who they are, I will let you know, but not so far as I know, because I've never heard of it. Oh, here we go.
Hello there.
Good day. I've been foundering, so I'm glad you've come to rescue me. We've been talking about all sorts of stuff, including what's going on in the Middle East, a little bit, what's been going on in South Africa, and all sorts of things. And I was going to say, did you have a first subject that you wanted to bring up?
Trying to think really. First subject. To be honest, when I just hopped. I've been home promised me internet, so I assumed we'd probably be on the third or fourth subject. But I mean, first subject. I would possibly be about what's what's been happening in major Western cities recently with the conflict,
Mhm.
and what's been allowed, what hasn't been allowed, and of course what's going to you know what's may or may not occur come Armistice Day on the 11th
Yeah.
of this month in
Yeah, I've
London.
been put.
Um,
I said it to the chat at the start of the stream. I was going to put that subject off because I know you've got quite strong views on this, going by what you've
yeah,
posted on Twitter. So yeah, absolutely, we can discuss that. Can I just say before we get on to that, Duke Valentino in the chat, he's saying, I saw that the Afrikaans and the Brits over there are still better about the past and it stops them working together. It's ridiculous that they are in that position and bickering. I've got to say, Duke Valentino, when I lived in South Africa, and like I say, I lived there for 3 years, I got into at least 2 fistfights over the Anglo-Boer War with Afrikaners, at least 2. And yeah, it's a big deal still over. I don't think it is anything like as big a deal now as it was in about 1985 when I moved there, when the white government was still in charge. I think everyone's got bigger problems now, but it was a big deal. It really was. And, there was a lot of there was a lot of propaganda on both sides going on. And because it was propaganda, not all of it was true. But Wiggles is saying the Brits were blamed. Well, when you say Brits, I take it you mean English-speaking South Africans for surrendering to the ANC, which is nonsense because the South African white population in '93 was about 60% Afrikaner and at most 40% English-speaking. So, the Afrikaners were the people who had the numbers to stop that from happening if they'd have all voted for it not to happen, but they didn't. As I said, there was only one province, and that was right up in the far north, near the Rhodesian border, that voted no. Everywhere else voted yes, we want to change the government. Everywhere else, including the Orange Free State, including Northern Natal, which is where I was based. And as I said, I voted no. And I certainly wasn't an Afrikaner. So, so if that is the case, they're being dishonest about it. But there we go.
I would like
Sauron,
to.
we're about to. Sorry, I beg your pardon. Now you can carry on.
I was just going to say, Wiggles. I think you've highlighted his comment here about. Did you see Carl Benjamin's traditional British
Yes.
group speech about supporting a Farage-led entryist takeover of the Conservative Party, Tory Party? I did watch that speech in its entirety, and I know that this isn't the first time he's. I think he's gone on the Lotus Eaters talking about this, and I think his idea is they wait for the Tory party. In his idea, he believes that Farage will wait for the Tory party to lose heavily in the next general election, and then while it's sort of on its knees, he will Farage and will swoop in with like reform people around him and reform. And Carl's idea is that he goes in as well with all the others on the back of that and enter the Conservative Party. Now, there's kind of a long list of reasons why I think that would be incredibly difficult to achieve.
Yeah, funny. AI, not to interrupt you, but before you came on, I actually said that because you used to be a member of the Conservative Party, I believe, didn't you?
Yeah.
And I said that you would have views about this, so I'm glad that you brought this up. Please carry on.
Yeah, I mean, well, for starters, membership, they will actively, people like Carl, people in any distant right sphere. I mean, let's just say, for example, with AA, which I highly doubt, but let's just say he and Carl and other people applied to join. I mean, their names would be flagged immediately anyway, and they would be prevented because anyone who poses a threat, would would automatically be removed, and not just a threat. I'm not talking about a threat to the Tory party. I mean, I'm talking about to the political, circus that exists in Westminster, because the Tory party, of course, are the containment opposition. Labour Party are the party that introduces and new legislation, and that's the cycle that you go down, and then Tories implement it, later down the road. So if there was like a takeover, that it wouldn't happen. You may get like Farage, who would be in, but he wouldn't have like the size and scope to really take it over, like that Carl was talking about. You then have the other option, which is you go in through the local party associations, which is what Carl was referencing. And in the old days, 30 odd years ago, probably 30, 40 years ago, that would have an effect, yes. But now, local party associations they're meaningless, because everything's decided by the national, I think it's like the Conservative National sort of Executive Committee, the central party office. Candidate selection. I mean, and then that's how you get Rishi Sunak, who has no connection to York, Richmond, the constituency of Richmond in Yorkshire. He has no connection to it at all. No family ties. No anything to it. But he was parachuted in. Funny thing, no, he was actually parachuted in that seat, and there was a candidate there she was a local councillor, well known. In the seat, served in that sort of wards around there for a couple of decades, I believe, and the local party wanted her, but no, he got it. Used to be William Hague's seat.
So, are you suggesting that this strategy won't work, AI? Because that seems to be what I think you're saying, or is unlikely to work.
No, I would say it's on. I don't think it's going to work. I mean, I without sounding absolute on it, I think it's incredibly unlikely that it would work. The only thing that, if they were serious about it, because the thing there is, I don't want it to be like overly critical Carl here, but the way that he presented it in his speech was, well, if we go in there with the right ideas, we can, and then with tools in. But the thing there is, even if you got past all those impossible stages and outmaneuvered and Machiavellian your way to getting the Tory party under Farageist, right-wingish control, however you want to define it, you then have the problem of the civil service. It's been tried
before, hasn't it?
Yeah,
AI.
but you have
infiltrating the Conservatives has been tried before, and it hasn't worked.
But the thing there is, you have had Conservative politicians who have tried to implement things that they cared about, which was outside of establishment, concern, like Danny Kruger and stuff, and they just get completely stonewalled, and the opposite happens. The opposite of what they want happens. So it's not really a question of, well, who controls the Conservative Party. It's at the end of the day, it's the permanent bureaucracy in the civil service. The policy making forums that think tanks and political analyst groups and NGOs, because they all work seamlessly together to uphold this to uphold this regime that we have. And in many ways, party politics really is kind of useless at this point.
Yeah, look, I mean, I've long said, AI, that I think if you're on the DR, the only way to vote at the next election, and indeed any election in Britain, is you've got to vote for one of the smaller right of centre populist, in air quotes, parties. You've got to vote for one of those guys.
I mean, the thing there is, I don't disagree with that sentiment, but Wiggles does raise. Unless the Tory party is destroyed, right? Let's just say it collapses under itself, or it goes bankrupt, and the party ceases to exist. The Tory party and Labour Party, people will always vote for them. you could get maybe let's just say the Heritage Party gets like 2 or 3 million votes.
Mm-hmm.
That I think that the majority of the public are still in that ruck of Labour Conservative, and I think the reason
They've
why
just got to
Carl
get
wants
out of it. They've got to get out of it. And
it's
those
not
of us on the
it's
DR
it's
have
pie
got to help them
it,
get out of it by telling them they
no
have
no
to get out of it.
It's pie in the sky. The people won't, because most people aren't. Most people are delusional. Unfortunately, most people aren't realistic.
I mean, I
I
was
mean,
saying before you came on, I was saying that I was watching a video earlier today, and the Home Office have just put out a pamphlet saying that British immigration over the next 5 to 10 years is going to double. British immigration into Britain is going to double. We're already running at a net of about 600,000 a year at the moment. So you're talking about well over 1 million a year. And as I was saying to the chat just before you joined us, actually, a few years of that and Britain's finished. It's not going to be savable anymore, in my view.
no,
you get 4 or 5 years of that, and Britain is not going to be savable anymore.
And we're seeing policies trying to be implemented in Sweden and in Germany to basically like a mass repatriation.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think with respect to this country, at the moment it is possible, but when we look at like 10, 20 years down the line,
Mm-hmm.
it's not going to be possible. You physically, you won't be able to do that.
Totally agree.
You won't have you won't have that capability of doing that.
We are on a very short timeline for Britain to be saved in any recognisable form, in my opinion. Very short timeline. I think you've got maybe a decade, but not if they're going to double the amount of mass immigration coming into the UK. Then you won't even have that long. I mean, I heard AA saying the other day that he thinks Britain is FUCKED. I can see why he says that, because it's difficult to see how you save it, to be honest with you, at the moment. And I am, as I said earlier in the chat, I'm the last person who would say that Britain's stuffed. I'm an extremely patriotic Englishman in Britain, but boy, are we in the shit at the moment. We really are. And absolutely we are. I would just say to the people in the chat who I noticed one or two of them have been talking about me. I got married to an English girl, and my son is completely English. And I would also point out, by the way, the only girl I'm talking to at the moment is actually an American girl of Anglo descent. So there we go. This thing that Carl wants to do, I think, try it by all means, but I don't think it's going to work. I don't think it'll work for a minute myself. And if the idea that Farage is going to somehow swoop in, if they're depending on Farage to swoop in, I'm not even sure that he'll do that, to be honest. Will Farage join the Conservatives? Do you think AI? I've got my doubts personally.
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
Puff Wagon, I think you're not wrong, mate. 5 years, that might be all we've got as well, with the amount of immigration they're talking about. So it's I don't know. Look, I mean, I'm all in favour of people trying to find solutions, but I still think that if you're on the DR, the solution at the moment is you should be voting for one of the smaller right of centre parties. The one that's got, I don't think it even matters which one, just the one that's most likely to win in your area or get most votes in your area. And of course, those smaller parties, if they've got an ounce of common sense and any sort of patriotism within them, they must form some sort of an alliance. Because if they don't, they're just running against each other and pinching votes off each other. It's ridiculous. So that's my view on that stuff, to be honest. I mean, what can you see another solution, AI? Because I can't.
A world war.
Yep. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I have actually thought that in my darker, more black-pilled moments myself. Sometimes that might actually be one of the ways that we could say change things.
One of the problems, and this is something, if you look at the rise of Bolshevism, of socialist movements and reactionary movements, and the mid-century German movement post World War One, or during and post World War One, the downside for engaging in war is you're taking a whole bunch of, like, your entire population of young men, and nowadays women, but young men, and you're putting them through military style training, education, and also, most importantly, organization. And the reason why a lot of these groups were able to form, especially out, like, really rise really and descend really quickly in Germany and Italy, was because of that military background and discipline.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep. Yeah, for sure.
and behavior. And the problem is, there is that, and it may, because one of the problems with the right, not just in this country but in America and everything, it is not just unity, but it's also organization. And there are a lot of people on the right who, even to this day, don't value the importance of organization, make bad decisions when it comes to people, like, as I say, Lawrence Fox is a classic example. I'm quite happy to name him as one. And then get stunned when they are thrown under the bus, and he walks off scot-free.
Yep. No, I don't. I
So
don't disagree with you, mate. I mean, look, this is one of the reasons I'm a big supporter with things like the event in Britain and the events they've had in America and basket weaving, as they call it. I think all of that real life stuff is excellent. And incidentally, I know that Chris Gard and some other people in Australia are working to do something like that, similar in Australia, which I think is a very good idea. But I can't give any more details about that yet, partly because it's not me doing it, but there is some work going on in that. And I know, for example, Lady Charlotte is another one who's going to be involved in that a bit. So there is some real life stuff going to be happening down under, which I think is high time that we had that sort of thing down here. But yeah, you've got to have some sort of organisation. You do.
But I mean, I would say, because I know I said World War. The problem with World War is, of course, that it would be long, and a lot of people would. I mean, millions would die.
Oh, look,
Tens of millions would die.
If you get a real world war now, AI, it's going to go nuclear, and if it goes nuclear, most people are going to die. I'm afraid, most people, everywhere. There won't be any winners. If it goes nuclear, and it will, as soon as someone launches one tactical nuke, and someone will for sure, then everyone else is going to pile in on it, because you have to, because you don't want to be struck first without getting replies off, and it's almost impossible to knock out everything before you get those replies coming off. There are various, like, dead man button schemes that most countries have now. And you're never going to find all of the nuclear boomer submarines at sea. You're never going to find all of them. It's just not possible. Of any country. So if you get a world war, and it really turns into a world war, involving the Yanks and the Russians and the Chinese and the Brits and French and everybody else, if you get that going off, it's going to turn nuclear, and it's going to kill most people. It just is. On the less black-pilled side of it, the survivors are not going to be shit-libs. That's for sure.
Yeah, I remember in Threads at the end, it was like the population of England was reduced back to like medieval levels of like 2 million. And but the thing there is that even in that, like, Britain, the states sort of it still carried on. It was just like under a military junta near
It
enough.
would
So,
be it would be very, very different. Yeah, it wouldn't be democratic. It wouldn't be able to be democratic. I don't think
no.
it would certainly
And
change things. It sure would.
and of course, in popular culture in when you have like depictions of like a nuclear apocalypse in America, it always descends into, you know, tribalistic anarchy, which is I always find quite interesting that there is this
I think it might.
idea that. Do
I
you
think it
think
might. I
because the
think
Americans
yeah. Not just in America. I think something similar to that would happen all over the world. I really do. And you would, because even the military is liable to collapse in that situation and break up. Yeah. And if you've got a company of well-armed, well-trained soldiers somewhere who have survived, you're going to have an enormous advantage over any number of civilians. Even if, like in America, a lot of them have guns. You know.
I mean, the closest we have to compare that is, you know, the mix of historical information of the Roman withdrawal from Britain and the
Can I
arrival of the
just
Anglo.
AI? Can I just tell Wiggles? He wants to know how to super chat. Wiggles, if you look at the top of the chat, there's a blue pinned comment at the top of the chat that gives you a link to Entropy, and you can super chat there. And I will go through any super chats we get before we end the stream and answer them as best as we can. So sorry, AI, do carry on. What are we getting here? Sonny Jimmy's saying he doesn't think World War III would be guaranteed to go nuclear. Not impossible, but still unlikely. I'll be honest with you, Sonny Jim. I don't think anyone wants a nuclear war. At least ways no one who's sane. Although I wonder when I hear some politicians talking these days how sane they are. But I just think that a really big war, if it was a world war, that's to say involving everybody all over the bloody place, that not going nuclear, I think we'd be bloody lucky if it didn't, put it that way. And, you know, half a dozen large nuclear bombs or missiles landing on the UK is going to kill most of the people there one way or another. And it would be more than that. It'll probably be about a dozen, at least. So, we seem to have lost AI. Hopefully he'll be back in a sec. But yeah, I think, as I said, if there was a really big war, you know, if Taiwan kicks off, all this nonsense going on in the Middle East, plus, you know, Ukraine and Russia and what have you, if that all somehow joined up into some great world war story, the chances of no one firing nuclear weapons at another person is pretty unlikely, to be honest. You know? So let's see. Good day, mate. I'm glad to see you back.
Hello, sorry, I think my again my internet sort of cut out. You were roboting, and I was sort of talking over you, and then suddenly I heard you come on for me.
Oh, okay. I beg your pardon, mate. I beg your pardon. But yeah, I was just saying, I think that, you know, if all the different conflicts and potential conflicts in the world at the moment did like join together, I think we'd be lucky if no one used nuclear weapons. And Brian Borrow is saying the Samson option that the Israelis talk about. You know, the Israelis' Samson option is where they would, if Israel's in danger of being overrun, they'll just fire nukes at everybody because, you know, bring the temple down on top of themselves, which is why it's the Samson option, obviously. But yeah. I don't know. I hope we can avoid that, to be honest with you. The other thing I say is that, you know, I think enough American and British and other Western young blokes have died in completely useless wars in the Middle East over the last 20 odd years. Do we really want any more of them to die in completely useless wars in the Middle East, in Iran, for example? Or have people got enough sense that they really don't want to do that? You know, I mean,
the thing there is, and I was talking to my parents the other day. It's like, right, I went on BBC News website.
Mhm.
Every single article or story is directed at anyone but British, right?
Mm-hmm.
I go on any news channel, whether it be lunchtime news, on any whether it's like BBC, ITV, Sky, whatever. That's Sky UK, not Sky Australia. In case people are watching, everything is directed at.
Yeah, you were saying AI? Can't hear you, mate. Your sound has gone for some reason. Can't hear you, AI. You might need to go out and come back in again, perhaps.
For
All right,
war
now
to
you're back.
if
Now
there
you're
was.
back.
Oh, can you hear me now?
Yeah, now you're back, mate. Now you're back.
Oh, okay. So I didn't know it popped off. I ultimately I don't think I don't think there will be enough people who willingly sign up, because too much damage has been done. I mean, if you look at the average young man today, whether it be American or British,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, let's be honest, that any heroic courage or any sort of vigor or vitality was stripped out at them at a young age.
Well, I was actually reading about this just the other day, AI, and the American military reckon that 75% of the young men in America are not fit enough to serve in the military. 75%, and that's of dudes under 25.
Yeah, so I wonder what the figure was like just before the outbreak for the Americans. That is the Second World War. I imagine it was.
It would have been vastly higher, because there was nothing like the obesity epidemic, because that's what most of it is. It's the obesity epidemic in America.
It's obesity, yeah.
Yeah, and they didn't have that prior to World War II at all. Americans were no fatter than anybody else for the most part.
I mean, you do see like those images of like a beach in California in like 1960 odd, and
everybody looks reasonably fit. Yeah, exactly. But you could say the same about Australia. Australia back then, everyone was pretty fit, and we have a lot of obesity in Australia today. And of course, even in Britain, it's far higher than it used to be.
Yeah, no, true, and processed. You talk about processed foods, and I think vaping. That's another thing. Like people affecting lungs and everything. Vaping is a.
Well, I don't know. Given I started smoking when I was 14, and I still weigh about the same as I did when I was 19. I don't know if that's entirely true, but yeah, maybe it's possible, I suppose.
I think vaping is particularly unique because of not because of because of what's the substances that are involved.
Yeah, could be. It could be. I mean, you can't vape in Australia because you can't buy vapes that have nicotine in them, which is ridiculous in my opinion. But there we go. Military theorist is saying the Zuma army will have femboy brigades. Yep, femboy brigades and fat black women. Yes, they're going to win the next war for us, which is, I don't think that's going to happen, but there we go. I mean, I was watching stuff and reading stuff this week about the Russians storming Ukrainian entrenched positions and tunnels. I would love to see some of these little cheeky babes and people doing that who were in the Western forces, because they weren't. The Ukrainians would have bloody well laughed at them, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But the Russians
and yeah, and the trouble is, like, even again, if war was to break out, the level of training, for the population to make them sort of fit enough for deployment, there wouldn't be enough time.
Well, yeah, I mean, you're looking at, to turn a basic, if you've got a basically fit young bloke, you need an absolute bare minimum of 5 or 6 months to turn him into an infantry dude. Yeah, but he's got to be fit at the start of that, and then you can get him more fit while you're training him. But if they're vastly overweight, then you could spend like 2 months just trying to get the dude down to weight or something, if you could do it. But yeah, but the Ukrainians found this, that they were sending their troops to be trained in Britain and other parts of the EU and what have you, by various NATO armies. And they just didn't have enough time to train them properly, particularly on the new material the new kit that they were being issued, which of course was vastly varied because it was everything people could give away. And they just weren't well enough trained on it, because you can't train people to be an efficient tank driver on a modern main battle tank or in an APC or whatever it might be. You can't train people to do that in 4 months or 3 months, which is actually what they were trying to do. And the Ukrainian offensive was a total disaster. They made no ground whatsoever. If you look at the great Ukrainian offensive over the summer and the spring, it makes the notorious British offensive on the Somme in 1916 look successful in terms of ground gained, because the Ukrainians gained next to no ground whatsoever for enormous casualties. So yeah, it would be very difficult, and I think there's also quite a lot of people who would have joined the military back when I did in the 1980s, for example, who wouldn't do so anymore. There's a lot of guys who are just completely disillusioned with the way our governments are going. And I mean, who the hell wants to die for Joe Biden or Rishi Sunak? You'd have to be insane to want to die for Joe Biden or Rishi Sunak. Yeah, he said, because AI has been saying he's been having trouble with his internet. Hopefully he will come back, because I want to get back onto this subject of the protest on Armistice Day Sunday next week. Ashton Duke, Ukrainian populace has been purposely ethnically cleansed. Well, I mean, half of the women have moved away anyway, so what can you say? I mean, their losses have been enormous. I mean, the Western media have been covering this up as much as they can, and so has the Ukrainian military, of course. But the Ukrainians have had horrendous losses, and they're far higher than the losses the Russians have had. Far higher. And the difference is, of course, the Russians can replace their losses and the Ukrainians can't. And which is why you've got even people in the Rat King, Zelensky's inner circle, are now turning around and saying that Ukraine can't win the war. It's just not possible. Which many of us who've got any sort of military experience have fought for quite a long time, that Ukraine cannot win this war. I don't think it would cause a civil war, Patriarch Archive, although maybe amongst the huge numbers of immigrants, it might cause a civil war amongst those dudes. Yeah, Asham Duke, I'm no fan of Zelensky at all. What do I think of Soviet military leadership in World War II? Well, they won, didn't they? So I guess you can say that about them. Can't say I was a big fan of Stalin. I think he was, there was not much to choose between Stalin and Hitler, if you ask me. But but the Soviets had some pretty good generals. Roshchevsky, I think his name was, and Zhukov and people like that. And they won the war. So what can you say? I mean, they got an awful lot of Lend-Lease stuff off the Americans, particularly trucks and half-track armed personnel carriers and food and fuel and all that sort of stuff. They got an awful lot of support from the Americans. They also got a lot of stuff off the Brits, including tanks and aircraft that we should have sent to the troops in the Far East rather than send it to Stalin, but there we go. But yeah. No, Duke Valentino, they didn't only rely on human wave tactics. No, they did not. They were a bit more sophisticated than that, actually. Voltaire Den Tocqueville and Craig says they won through numbers alone. Well, they had much higher numbers than the Germans. I mean, if you read the German intelligence reports during the war, the Germans vastly underestimated how many divisions the Soviets had. And they consistently underestimated how many divisions the Soviets had and could bring up. But they also lost a lot more men. They lost far more men in killed, wounded, and prisoners than the Germans did. So, do I think the Germans could have ever won in the East? No, not really. To be honest, no. Not unless they had been able to start that war when they weren't fighting in the West and didn't need troops in the West. If they'd have just gone east and hadn't needed troops to occupy France and have troops in North Africa and all the rest of it that they ended up with, maybe then they might have been able to, but I don't know. PQ-13 is the convoy you're talking about there. It's not QP, it's PQ-13, I think, was the one that got badly damaged, but mainly because the Admiralty, stupidly, because they got some false reports, split it up. So it wasn't really escorted, but anyway. Yeah, not all that many Germans came back from Stalingrad. That is very true. Most of them died in captivity, but they were in a pretty bad state when they were captured, it has to be said, because they've been on short rations and what have you for quite a long time. But I mean, it was a pretty brutal war on both sides in the East. Like by and large, the Germans tended to mostly stick to the Geneva Convention in the West when they were fighting the Brits and the Americans and the Canadians. That is not in the East. It was a much more brutal war on both sides. On both sides. AI, you're back. I'm pleased to see. How you going, mate? You're muted at the moment, AI. Your sound is muted, mate. Wait a minute. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah. Paulus was the German field marshal in charge at Stalingrad, who was captured and then worked for the Russians. He did. Oh, he's fixing his microphone, guys. He'll be back in a sec. Hopefully. Eric Hartman came back, did he? I didn't know that. Voltaire, Den Tocqueville, and Craig. On the Western Front, they were, yes. Not on the Eastern Front, but on the Western Front, they were in retreat at the end of World War One. Yes.
Hello, Iron Duke. Can you hear me?
Yeah, mate. Perfect. That's good. Your sound's fine.
Yeah.
All right. Can
and the
we just get on?
internet has, get
That's
on.
fine,
Yeah.
mate. I understand. I think we should talk about this. Obviously, next Sunday is Armistice Day Sunday, and normally in Britain, for anyone who's not British in the chat, there is normally a big parade of veterans and war widows and what have you. And of course, it's the day when Britain remembers her war dead, not just from World War One and World War Two, but also all the British servicemen who have died since 1914 up to the present day. So it's a big deal in Britain. And on that same day, somehow or other, by some strange coincidence, somebody has allowed the Palestinians to hold a great big massive rally on the same day, which to me is appalling. I mean, I was saying, before you joined us, that the British government should just ban the Palestinian rally on that day and say you can do it the day before, you can do it the day after, you can't do it on that day, you know? Or even just ban it completely, because I don't really care about the war in the Middle East. I'm entirely neutral about who wins that war. And there are people suggesting that people should go into London there and protect our monuments and statues and the parade and stuff. What's your opinion on this, AI? Because I know you've got quite strong views on this that you've been talking on Twitter about.
Yeah. So for starters, on the Saturday where you have the armistice, it's on Sunday, obviously, but because of the 11th falls on a Saturday, the parade and the sort of service at the Cenotaph from what has been said by the Metropolitan Police, the pro-Palestinian protests won't be taking place near or around the Cenotaph. Now, it doesn't mean that some of them may not try and interact or get through and just like individuals disrupt it, but whatever the case, but it's going to be taking place in London anyway, in central London.
And they're hoping for people in the chat that these pro-Palestinian people are hoping for 1 million people on their march, and they're bussing in Muslims from all over Britain. So sorry, carry on, man.
Yeah, Muslims, leftists, socialists,
there'll be
workers,
leftists, Antifa, all the usual shitbags, basically.
Yeah, Marxist students, everybody and anybody that they can get their hands on. And you're going to have the Remembrance service. One of my objections, and people on Twitter, I said basically, if you're a British patriot, British person, don't go on Sunday. And the reason I said this is in the British media there has been incredible levels of and I'm not saying this as like some sort of Zio show or anything like that. It's just an observation that there's been in the protests in London from the Palestinian side, there has been a massive amount of cover and protection where from GB News, even GB News have been sort of denying that the pro-Palestinian people have been violent, even though that they've been vandalizing, which is classed as violence anyway, is a violent act. And they've been targeting in last protest. They've been targeting the Cenotaph before, Churchill statue, all these sorts of things, which gets the average British person all riled up. And the reason they've been targeting central London is because they know the importance, and with the Cenotaph in particular, they know the importance of that, for the veterans, for the British people. and for the identity, and there's not much identity left in Britain. I mean, that is sort of
Yeah.
that sort of what collective World War II spirit is what you got left.
I fully agree with you, mate. Fully agree with you.
And the problem is there's been this build up where they've been trying to antagonize the the what would be the patriotic football lads alliance types, that turned out BLM, and from what I can see, from the police downward, they're desperate for them to turn up and to chimp out, to attack the police, attack the Palestinian lot, and in front of the world's media. And for me, this is just screaming one huge trap. And I'm not. I don't usually say this lightly. I'm not. There seems to be extreme levels of coordination, because there, where I believe, whoever, if they go down there, this will be like Britain's January 6th. Remember these sort of outlandish claims made about that they were trying to overthrow the American Republic and all that sort of nonsense. Yeah. I believe that this is what's going to occur on Sunday if the patriotic lot chimp out and get mad. And to be honest, if I was down there, I saw shit that they're going to pull, which I think they're going to pull anyway, I'd be mad. And they know, because they want people to lash out. But the problem is the police are on the side of the pro-Palestinian lot.
Yes, of course.
The local,
yes, 100%. They're not our friends on the right. They're definitely not our friends.
The courts are on their side. The local authority there in Westminster and in London and in government are all on their side. Now, to get a protest in central London, right?
Mm-hmm.
Someone just said Charlottesville. Yeah, again, remember Unite the Right? Look how that happened.
Absolutely,
same thing. It united them all in one place, and they were absolutely destroyed. They were just destroyed. And if you look at London, to get a protest, to organise a protest in central London, you need to have a permit from, I believe it's either the Home Office and the Mayor Office. Now,
well, the Mayor's going to give it, because that's Sadiq Khan, who is totally anti-British.
Yeah, that's how the Palestinian lot have been given, carte blanche on every weekend. Now, what Labour and Sadiq Khan have been saying is, they said, well, if you don't want this to go ahead, the UK government, the ball's in their court. They have to be on. They can veto and ban it.
And they should.
They are true.
They should.
And they should. But and this is where I have multiple theories why they don't. I think there's a cynical reason. I think the Tories want people to be wound up about this. They are hoping that the Palestinian lot chimp out and wreck the cenotaph, and behave like well, you know what I mean. Behave like barbarians, and it will anger a lot of British people. The feeling that London, symbolically London has fallen. So there could be that cynical thing. There's also the other thing where
you could argue the best thing from the point of us dudes on the DR, the best thing might be if they did actually desecrate the cenotaph and stuff like that. That might be the best thing, because maybe, as people have been saying in the chat, that might actually finally wake a lot of normies up to what is really happening in Britain.
I think, I think it would wake a lot of people up. I think it would definitely shift people, because the problem is, at the same time, if that happens, you don't want your Douglas Murrays and your who's the other one I'm thinking of? Your Douglas Murray and
yeah, I know. Lawrence
yeah,
Fox. Yeah.
Lawrence Fox
Yeah.
and the centre right type to basically contain it down to, well, these people haven't integrated properly, or some bollocks like that, or
Yep.
or contents of character and everything. And really, this has to come. That we're at this point where and the centre right are desperately, they're doing this tightrope sort of routine of where they're trying not to fall into this obvious this obvious chasm of it comes down, where does culture and civilization come from? Like where does it actually come from? It doesn't come from ideas, because
No.
ideas come from culture and civilization.
Yes.
It comes from race.
Oh,
And
for sure.
that's
For
the
sure.
fun.
Yeah.
And that's the fun, and it comes from all races. It's not just the
Yeah.
European,
No, because
all parts of the world.
various cultures and civilizations. Of course there are. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it comes from that, and the uh, the sort of, I say, boomer conception of culture, civilization, and race, and color blindness. And I think color blindness has probably been the most, I think the most insane
Yep.
thing to ever grasp people's minds, um, because that idea has actually, in many ways, you look back to Rotherham and stuff, that's kind of like the excuse that was given by many people who turned a blind eye. Was, well, I don't see race, I don't see race.
Yeah. Right.
And it's actually, I mean, I would say it's borderline mental health, because you're sort of denying um a very obvious biological and reality
Well, look,
that's right in front of you.
the thing you've got to say is you've had Douglas Murray of all people, calling on people to go to London and defend the cenotaph and this kind of stuff. But
Yeah.
those of us who are old enough to remember, Douglas Murray was a total neocon not all that long ago. He was often on the same sorts of platforms as the late Christopher Hitchens, who was also a total neocon. I'm talking about Christopher Hitchens, not his more based brother who's still alive. But Christopher Hitchens was a total neocon. Douglas Murray was a total neocon, totally in favour of all the wars in ridiculous sandy places in the Middle East. And also a big time Israel shill, of course. So yeah, I do hesitate that people on the DR and really actual right wing people should go running off to do what Douglas Murray tells them to do. I mean, will Douglas Murray be out there? I wonder. I doubt it somehow.
Well, I remember Douglas Murray's response on trigonometry to January the 6th, where he, went along with the establishment narrative that this was a attack on democracy and everything. So, I mean, the problem is, like, even if you were a patriot and you go down there, the people who effectively your leaders, the people that you're joining ranks with, Douglas Murray, Lawrence Fox, I'm going to be absolutely straight with you. They will chuck you under the bus in a heartbeat.
If it suits them, yeah,
In
they
a heartbeat.
will, for sure.
If a punch was thrown and somebody on the, somebody was either seriously injured or anything else, your side would be thrown on the bus, no matter what the context was.
Well, there was a video on Twitter I watched earlier. You probably saw it, where there were a group of British veterans in London, one or two of them in uniform, and the police, because they had a couple of Union flags with them, a couple of Union Jacks with them, the police went up and warned them and took at least one of their flags away from them. They never do that to the Palestinians. You can wave a fucking Palestinian flag or an Israeli flag as much as you like in London, and the cops will never bother you. If you've got the British flag in London, the police will come and warn you and take that flag away. That should be telling people what's going on, really.
But I mean, also that's a good point. The reason why officers on the ground, these Met officers on the ground, is that they know, along with a good portion of the public, everyone knows deep down that the Muslim contingent, when push comes to shove, will do anything and everything to win, for their side to win, for their group of people to win, even if it means, putting themselves in harm's way.
Mm-hmm. Well,
And
I'd like to believe that if push came to shove, so would the English and British people. But
no, I don't think they would. Not even the veterans, because I think there would be that.
I don't know about that. I don't know
What?
about that, mate.
Okay,
Particularly the veterans. I'm not sure you're right about that, mate.
I don't think the veterans would strap themselves full of explosives.
Oh no,
or knife.
Sure, they wouldn't do that. No, they wouldn't do that
get,
because they're
they
not
wouldn't,
that.
or
Because
they
they're
wouldn't.
not into killing. They're not into killing innocent civilians. So they
But
wouldn't
that's
do
the
that.
thing.
No, you're right.
That's the thing. The Muslim lot know that the Palestinian things, they rely on that that zealous nature that instills fear in
But
a lot of people.
But I mean, all right. Accept that. Fair enough. I see what you're saying. Can't really argue with you about that because it is true. But why are they in Britain? Why are they in our country? They don't belong there. They don't belong in Britain.
Well, they are. Yeah, they brought curry to the British Isles. I mean, actually, that they don't.
Yeah, they shouldn't be in the
They don't.
country in the first place. They just shouldn't be in the country in the first place. And then we could just have our Armistice Day Sunday like we always have had as a tradition, and there would not be this shit going on around it.
Yeah,
that's my ultimate opinion of it. It just shows that these people do not belong in the British Isles. They just don't belong there.
I do think the ultimate
sent back
fear
to the Middle East where they came from.
I mean, the ultimate fear of the police officers and the government, and I think the government has been sort of like the officers were putting down missing images of Israelis or whatever, those posters.
Yeah.
And you had all that, and LBC and talk radio lapped all that up. I think the ultimate reason why they've been very, very like facilitating of the Palestinian lot is that they are afraid of, because the Muslims are, I mean, they are organized. You can't say their communities aren't organized. That they are ultimately worried that of the race war. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the race riots of Bradford. I think in 2001. I remember that. But today, if there was a race riots in England,
mm-hmm.
I don't think the police could get it under control.
I don't know, mate. Look, at half of me thinks that might be the best thing to happen.
It would be.
Providing our dudes don't get hurt, and I don't regard the cops as our dudes at all. I really don't. I think that they're our enemies for the most part because they've been so politicized now for the left and all the nonsense. So yeah, providing good British civilians weren't hurt. Yeah, Mitch, I'm sorry, mate. I can see that you said you got stuff going on. No worries, mate. I understand that you've got important stuff to talk about. That's not a problem, Mitch. But yeah, I providing no good British civilians or veterans were being hurt. Like I said earlier, I think in some ways the best thing that could happen would be a giant Palestinian riot where things like the cenotaph and what have you were violated, because I think that might help wake up a hell of a lot of normies.
I mean,
to what's really going on in Britain, which is the destruction of our country, basically.
I mean, what would you? I think the ultimate ploy would be if they tore down the Churchill statue or something like that.
Well, I wouldn't even care about that. But yes, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that's probably true. I'm not a big Churchill fan, but yeah.
But in the minds of the average British, member of the British public, I think that would probably be like a. But then you've got I think Morgoth tweeted it out. He said, like, would you be satisfied with the expulsion of this group, the
For
Muslim group?
anti-Semitism, yes. And
Yeah.
I have to say, yes, I would. I mean, I'll get rid of as many of them as I can, as easily as I can, basically. That's the truth of it. Like, you know what? If that's the reason they want to use for it, I'll say, all right, as long as it gets rid of some of them. You know? It doesn't, I mean, I get what Morgoth is saying. He's saying it doesn't address the whole problem. But, you know, if it gets rid of some of them, good as far as I'm concerned. Getting rid of some is better than getting rid of none.
Yeah. I mean, if you look at like the worst problems, it wouldn't. It would be so many. We talk about grooming gangs and everything. If we were able to solve, to repatriate, it would solve so many problems, and also it would free up a lot of the welfare state as well. So
it would. I tell you something I think is worth mentioning, just because someone's talking about Keir Starmer in the chat. I have noticed that, I don't know if you've noticed this, AI, but have you noticed that Keir Starmer has stopped wearing a poppy recently?
Yeah, that's right.
Because he doesn't want to offend the Muslim voting base of Labour in a lot of Midlands and Northern seats where there are a hell of a lot of Muslims, you know.
Yeah, up in Yorkshire and places like that.
I think that's another thing that is worth pointing out to normies. You know, this is why really you want to get rid of Rishi Sunak and bring Keir Starmer in. But bear in mind, Keir Starmer was head of the Crown Prosecution Service at the time of the worst parts of the grooming gang scandals, and he made sure relatively few of those Muslim people who were involved in what was basically child RAPE. That was really what the grooming gangs were about. He made sure very few of them got prosecuted. So, you know, that's worth pointing out to normies, I think, as well. You know, Keir Starmer is not going to be your saviour. Far from it.
No. I mean, the thing is, the ultimate one, you have to get normies to get out of this idea of looking back in anger. I mean, we talk about what's going on in Israel and everything. I mean, there's not been any.
We're supposed to get angry, AI. We're supposed to be angry about these dead and captured and raped Israeli women and children. And don't get me wrong, I am totally against women and children, whether they be Israelis or Palestinians, being killed. I'm totally against that because I'm a civilized English and British man. I'm not in favor of killing women and children of any race, right? But we're supposed to get angry about that, according to some people. But we're not supposed to get angry when, like, Muslims blow English little girls to smithereens in music stadiums, or thousands of English schoolgirls are raped and abused. We're not supposed to get angry about that. Then we're supposed to go, oh, don't look back in anger. But we're supposed to get angry about what's going on in the Middle East. It's not our problem.
No, I mean, for me, anything that happens going forward, I'm looking back in anger now. I after the behavior of Israel, and what Israel's been up to, I'm all on board of anyone who says don't look back and no, we're going to get angry.
We do, and we need to get angry, but we need to get angry about our own people, not what's happening in the bloody Middle East, thousands of miles away.
Yeah,
that's my view. And I'm Mitch. You know as well as AI does, and most of the chat will. I'm in favour of the British stiff upper lip, but that British stiff upper lip is not there to ignore what happens to your own people and get angry about some foreigners thousands of miles away. And all of this, all of this big protest. Sorry, I was just going to say, all of this big protest is completely alien to Britain. I mean, why are there thousands and thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters going to march in London? It's got nothing to do with the British people.
Well, it's in the old sort of phrase that came back from the the Blairite era, it's to rub diversity in the face of the British public, because they hate them. I mean, fundamentally, they hate the people who run us. Hate Britain. They have a deep-rooted hatred for it, for multiple reasons, and some of it's ethnic, some of it's. I mean, I think with Rishi Sunak and a lot of the Tory, the Indian subcontinent Tories, I think a lot of it's ethnic hatred. To be honest, I think a lot of it's empire legacy related. I think it's ethnic hatred. If I was to be, because that's the only thing I can logically come to. But I'm going to have to head off in a minute. But on the final point, I was just going to say, because I won't be around next Saturday for this show, but I would say that if personally, this is my personal view, I wouldn't go. I'm not going, and I wouldn't go to London on Sunday because I've got a lot of bad vibes, a lot of bad feelings about what's going to occur. But if you do decide to go, if people do decide to go, don't allow them to lead you off from the cenotaph, because if you're going to go there, just hang around the cenotaph and
stay together in a big group is like what I would say.
Yeah, and don't allow, and if you there will be agent provocateurs on your in the crowd who will be saying, "Come on, guys, let's go down here and give them a good walloping or something." Yeah, no, kick him out, because those are probably undercover cops who are trying to start shit.
Could well be true. Could well be true. But if you've got to go in a minute, AI, is there anything you would like to shill, like your YouTube channel, etc., at the moment?
Yeah, so I got my YouTube channel, AI Shire
Which
Tory.
is AI Shire Tory, I think it is, isn't it?
That's right, AI Shire Tory. This Thursday, I am booked to have do an interview with Alexander Adams, artist. He has sort of organised with a few other sort of right wing, let's say, like dissident artists like Pharaoh and others. There's several events, and one event recently in London, and I think there are a lot of people who say, okay, we can't. If we don't go to London, what can we do? What is it we do? Because we don't have any power, and that's true. We don't. But what we can do is what Alexander Adams do, and we can. I believe culture. When I say culture comes from the race and the people, if like these chaps who produce artwork which isn't astroturfed, agreed in some sort of boardroom, like it's genuine, and it resonates with the people, with the people of this land.
For sure,
this is more powerful than any. If I'm absolutely honest, any stream or anything I can produce or anything, because it's real, it's permanent, it's fixed in the real world, and throughout history, when you have revivals, whether it be the Iranian or the Latin West revival, it usually comes with art and sculptures and
I'm absolutely in favour of right of centre art and creativity. I think we definitely need to move more into that space. You're right, AI, 100%.
And I think if you're able to create beauty, it's something that the left won't. The only way the left could stop you is if they destroy it. They can't. I mean, what are they going to? They can't debate you. They can't try and debate you or debunk you on your.
And
your,
they
the
certainly
beauty
can't
of
create
something.
anything beautiful themselves. That's for sure. They just can't.
To undermine yours. Yeah, they can't. No. So I think, for me, I'm because I've been so sick of the news cycle and politics now.
So what day are you doing this stream with Alexander Adams? AI?
Thursday, 9 o'clock, I believe it's
Thursday, 9 o'clock
Thursday
UK time. So
UK time. That's right.
There you go, guys. Do go and tune into that. I shall certainly watch that AI. No problem at all. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, by the way.
No, that's great. Thank you for having me on. And unfortunately, just about the internet, it's just been it's I don't know. I think Mossad's trying to take me out. So,
either that or what is it, the 77th Brigade or whatever they call those.
77th Brigade.
Yeah, in the internet military spies in Britain, it could be those guys too.
I imagine we probably have our own office, our own whiteboards in different office now. Like there's like a image of me and there's like an image of you next door or something like that, and there's
funny.
like an octopus sort of a spreadsheet and of all of our conversations and connections with others.
I don't think we're big enough for that yet, but yes, I see what you're saying. But yeah, there's always Simple Pirate. There are always feds around watching stuff that we're doing. Always.
On the topic of feds, I would say when my couple tweets went viral when I was telling people not to go to London, there were a lot of sus accounts that Mosley and Joyer, that's those sorts of accounts who said, no, we march, we go and march, and I was like, okay, yeah, fuck off.
Yeah. Mosley and Joyer, I'd be a bit suspicious of someone called that, to be honest, but yeah. I would just say to what's the lady in the chat here? I think it's a lady anyway. Harpy Girl. I would just say to her in the chat, look, this channel, my channel, is an Anglo-Celtic patriot channel. And I'm like my Discord, I have lots of Englishmen, obviously, but I have Scots, I have Welshmen, I have some good Irishmen, and I must say I do have some good Irishmen. They're all loyalist Irishmen. I've got Australians, Canadians, I've got some Americans, good Americans. So this is an Anglo-Celtic loyalist channel, and I'm an Englishman, right? If someone asked me, what are you? I'll always say an Englishman. I was born in London, for God's sake. And I'm absolutely proud to be an Englishman, but I am also proud to be a British guy as well. And as far as I'm concerned, the good Scots and Welsh and Irish, including, of course, the Northern Irish, those guys are our brothers and sisters. That's my view. Harpy's girl, anyway.
Yes.
And we have enough enemies. We have enough enemies. We need more. We need more allies, not more enemies. And Harpy's girl, fine, great, and I'm happy you're an English lady. But and I like English ladies and I like English gents. But like I said, there are many good Scots, Welsh, Northern Irish, and even Southern Irish people. Many good ones, as well as people around the White Commonwealth, the Old Commonwealth.
I do wonder if there's ever been an occasion where a Fed who watches these sorts of shows has ever been converted. And they've listened to it, think, you know what, I agree with that sort of position.
Yeah.
So
very true, very true. John, not his real name. Are you asking me about my accent? Hang on, if you're asking me about my accent, I'll explain it to you in a sec if you want. Sorry, I'll carry on, man.
No, I was just going to say sort of on that point I'll say goodnight, but
Because
And the effects
I
on
do
me on.
think if they were sensible, they would be converted, because we're not arguing for anything extreme. We're not arguing for anything bad. We're just saying that Anglo-Celtic people deserve their own countries like other people deserve their own countries.
I would say I've had the level of pushback I've had for telling people not to go down has been actually really, really fascinating. And the amount of people, it was like almost like bot. When you get swarmed by bots.
Yep.
It was kind of, it's sort of reinforced what I sort of come to suspect about what's going to happen come next Sunday.
Yeah, well, let's see what happens, mate. Let's see what happens. You've kind of won me around to your opinion, to be honest with you. That people shouldn't go. Partly because I think if the Palestinians go crazy, which they well might, or the pro-Palestinians, I should say, that might wake up more normies. It might. Who knows?
Yeah. I mean, I would say that wherever you are living in the UK, your local town or village most likely will have an Armistice Day
100%. Yep. 100%.
event going on. So you could always go along to that. That's what I do. So,
We do it down here in Australia as well. I bought my poppy last week. And we have Armistice Day services as well. I mean, obviously Anzac Day is a big deal down here, but we still do Armistice Day as well.
Well, that's good.
So, and I know Canada does as well, and I presume New Zealand does. So, yeah. But yeah, thanks very much for joining us, mate. I've got one super chat. I don't know what it is yet. I've got to go and look at it.
Oh, okay. I'll hang on a sec.
Let's have a look. Okay. Yeah, you can answer this as well, mate. Wiggles for $5. Do you have a preferred military and veterans charity? I don't know if you have one. I do have a couple that I think are pretty good.
I do like the Chelsea pensioners. I mean, I know they're not sort of but those are the ones that come to mind, which are still quite good,
Yeah, I mean, look, I like Help for Heroes. I think that's a pretty good charity, and it supports a lot of the widows and orphans from the completely useless and wasted wars in Afghan and Iraq in the British Army. That's a pretty good charity. Also, like in Australia, I support the RSL still, because they do pretty much the same stuff in Australia that the Royal British Legion does in Britain. That's the RSL in Australia are the guys who sell you your poppies. Obviously, in Britain, it's the Royal British Legion. And certainly, I think if you're a good patriotic Brit, you should definitely buy a poppy and wear it. Because if you wear it, you're actually, these days particularly, you're showing that you do actually remember your ancestors. And even those of us who think, there were things wrong about World War I and World War II, I think if you're a sensible person, you don't criticize the people who fought in that war. They were just patriotic guys doing their best. And they certainly were not fighting for the LGBTQ flag or anything crappy like that. They were fighting for their country. So I think they're worth remembering on that basis.
Oh, no, that's right. I mean, you never criticize the soldiers. It's you say what you want about the political leaders of the day and the merits of a war or whatever. I mean, even the Vietnam War, which was objectively was a complete defeat and disaster. You still create the Americans who fought.
Yeah, the guys who fought there, they were doing their best, and that's all.
And the Australians,
and the Australians, absolutely correct, and the New Zealanders as well, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's as I often say, if you're in the military, if you're a soldier, a sailor, or an airman, you do not get to choose your war. You get sent to whatever war they choose to send you to. And so I'm quite happy to honour the men who actually do the fighting. Doesn't mean I always support the politicians that send them there by any means, but Yeah. But yeah, for sure, you can't criticize the guys who did the fighting and the guys who died and were killed, and also, you know, all the widows and orphans that were left for it and all that kind of thing. Right, I'm going to answer this accent question before we finish up and I play us out with a tune. My accent is a bit strange. It is because I was born in London, and although I never had a full-on Cockney accent, I was born in inner South London. I then spent 15 years in South Africa, and I've lived in Australia for 23 years. So my accent is a bit of a mixture. It's not totally British, it's not totally Australian, it's somewhere in between. And when I first arrived in Australia, many people thought I was South African because I had a bit of a South African accent, but I think I've lost a lot of that now. And as Bilboa in the chat says, there's actually a lot in common with London and Southeast Australian and Southeastern London accents. There's quite a lot in common with those anyway. But that's where my accent comes from. So there we go. Okay, so as always, I'm going to play us out with a tune. Bum, 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 bum. Eventually, those. Yeah, if it works, who knows?
One by one the pale stars die before the day now. One by one the great ships are stirring from their sleep. Cables all are rumbling, anchors all away now. Now the fleets are fleet again, gliding towards the deep. Far away behind us, town and tower dwindling. Home becomes a fair dream, faded long ago. Infinity glorious, the height of heaven is kindling. Infinity desolate, the shoreless sea below. again with proud hearts we make the old surrender. Once again with high hearts serve the age to be. Not for us the warm life of earth, secure and tender, ours eternal wandering and warfare of the sea. Lead the line
Okay, and that was Lead the Line, which is a song about the British Royal Navy, of course, from the excellent Patriotic Archives channel. I've got a comment from him up on the screen at the moment. Do go and check out Patriotic Archives channel. He's got some really good traditional military and also just traditional British and other content on his channel. Apparently that's a poem by Sir Henry Newbold. So there we go. And do go and check out Patriotic Archives channel. Thank you very much to my guest AI this evening. He had some good insights into a lot of stuff. And not sure if there'll be another stream next week, an extra stream next week. I'm going to try and do that Wellington stream I've been threatening for ages on the Peninsula War, Wellington in the Peninsula. I will try and get that done next week, but I can't guarantee I will because I'm quite busy at the moment. If not, we will see you all next week for Splendid Isolation number 148. I would just say, guys, keep strong, as people have said in the chat, and do buy your poppy if you're in a Commonwealth country or British or Commonwealth country that sells them, and wear it with pride is what I would say. And go well, folks.